Well, we're through the non-conference slate, and this is where the season starts to get really fun when you're playing all those Big Ten teams. You're all fighting to get to Indianapolis. Illinois' got a real shot to get there this year, so this is going to be a really fun Big Ten slate. Welcome back to Inside the Illini with Ben Machi. I'm Ben Machi, your host. We're doing this every single Tuesday as Illinois plays football. This is Week 3. This is what we have on tap. We're going to recap Western Michigan. Not going to spend too much time on that one. It was a blowout. And then we're going to preview Indiana, the first real big game of the year for Illinois here so far. On the road, ranked team. Going to be a fun one Saturday night in Bloomington. And we're going to get into around the country. Georgia and Tennessee, an overtime thriller. Georgia got it done. And then Texas A&M. They go into South Bend and beat Notre Dame. Notre Dame now 0-2. We're going to look ahead to this weekend's slate, and then we're going to make some game picks. We're doing well in one area, not so well in another, but we'll get to that a little later on. Illinois and Western Michigan, 38-0. Illinois, they overcame a pretty slow start. That's something that, unfortunately early on in the season we're starting to get used to. But they did turn it on in the second half. Obviously, you want to see that. It was 10-0 at halftime. Ended up being 38-0 blowout. Defense, a goose egg. Always like to see that for those guys. They work really hard on that side of the ball. All right, let's start with that sluggish start. 2 weeks in a row that the offense just has not been able to do anything really in the first half of games. Against Duke, it was really the offensive line giving Luke Altmaier no time to throw. He got sacked a lot of negative yardage plays against Duke. This week, a little bit more of the same, more so in the running game, I think. Just not a lot of holes for Caden Fagan and Khalil Valentine to try to break through, especially in the first half. They just really have not been able to run the ball in the first half. And there was a little bit more of Luke Altmaier and the wide receivers not being on the same page. Throws behind, throws a little early or late from Luke. But again, they were able to bounce back in the second half. Listen to this. This is the first half drive chart. And obviously you all watched the game, but they went field goal, punt on a 3-and-out, touchdown, punt on a 3-and-out, punt on a 3-and-out. Against Western Michigan at home. It's just not good enough from the offense here in the first half. Plus, Western Michigan missed a field goal, and they had it down at the goal line at the end of the first half. They were stopped on fourth down and ended the half. A great tackle there at the goal line to stop Western Michigan from slamming it in and making it a much closer game at halftime, even though it was already 10-0. Barry Lunney, yesterday at the coaches' press conferences, he spoke on the slow starts for Illinois' offense and maybe how they can fix it.
Similarities is obviously we got to call it better and execute better. It's really that simple. And so there's no magic pill to swallow. We just got to put them in better situations, and we got to be a little bit more focused to execute early. I think a lot of it's, we're getting excited to go play, and we've got to be more mature than that. I've got to do a better job of making sure I don't complicate the issue with a play call or a mistake, which I made the other day. It complicated it a little bit, but really we just got to calm down and execute, do your job.
Now, I'm not making something out of nothing. This was the talk of the press conference throughout with of course, Barry Lunney and then Brett Bielema as well on Monday afternoon. They really know that it's an issue, and they want to start getting the offense going earlier in games, because in Big Ten play, you're really not going to have the ability to start that slow and still compete by the time the fourth quarter gets there. You have to start and play well throughout the game to win games in the Big Ten. The question really is this offense good enough to compete consistently in the Big Ten? I'm throwing out that question. The good thing is that we're going to find out here soon. Big Ten play starts on Saturday. Like I mentioned, they need to find that running game. And, Aiden Lawfrey didn't play on Saturday, a little banged up. Caden Fagan, I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, I thought he looked pretty slow and hesitant coming off that injury. I did think he looked a lot better on Saturday. He ran for over 100 yards. He was pretty good, especially in that second half. Khalil Valentine, to me, he just continues to pop. Every time he touches the ball, you think that he's going to break one open, and he has that ability to do so. I wouldn't be surprised if Khalil Valentine, by mid Big Ten play, is maybe not a solid lead back, but maybe is getting the majority share of the touches. Caden Fagan is always going to get the goal line touches because of how big and strong he is. And Aiden Lawfrey can, of course, pop the top off of defense as well with that speed. But, Valentine, he's just been outstanding every single time I see him. And I do think if they get that running game going, it's going to help Luke Altmaier and the wide receivers be a little more consistent, especially early on in games. When you get that running game going, things start to open up in front of receivers a little bit more. Luke Altmaier, he said much of the same as what you heard from Barry Lunney there. They're still working through it post game. They're trying to work through some things on the offensive side, and he says they're going to get better as the season goes on. Here's Luke Altmaier.
Just got to get better. We're trying to maybe playing conservative. I don't know. We'll figure it out. It's good to have these moments right now so early because we can figure out where our weaknesses are, our strengths are, and I think we're on the right track for sure. It's good to have that second half to, again, overcoming resiliency, bouncing back after some struggles for sure. We were frustrated, and credit to them for being really, really good at what they were doing. Good defense coordinator, good head coach, but I think we figured it out and going to continue to figure it out.
He's right. You would rather have these problems early on against Western Michigan than you do when Ohio State comes to town in a few weeks. I think they'll get it figured out. The offensive line is too good and has too many guys returning to not be able to ramp it up here for Big Ten play. So I do think that they will figure it out. That's Illinois and Western Michigan. Let's get to games around the country. It was a great Saturday to be sitting on your couch and taking in all of the action. We're going to start with that game down in Neyland. Georgia and Tennessee. What a game. Georgia stormed back from a big deficit early and won in overtime 44-41. Both quarterbacks were great in this game. Both of them, Gunnar Stockton and Joey Aguilar, both really good. You can see their stats there, both over 300 yards. Gunnar Stockton, there's a lot of questions about him coming into this year because, really the only time that we had seen him was when Carson Beck got hurt late last year. And, he didn't play that well in the playoff game against Notre Dame, and Georgia lost. But he did, play most of the game in the SEC championship when they beat Texas. So maybe we shouldn't be surprised. But he was awesome. I think he proved that he can be the guy and the reason that Georgia wins some of these games, because you never expect Georgia to give up 41 points because they're just so good defensively year after year after year. But hey, they were in a hole on Saturday, and Gunnar Stockton really pulled them out of it because the defense didn't really figure out anything all game long against Joey Aguilar. He was great, and I think he really, if there was still some doubt after a couple of weeks, I think it's clear that Tennessee won the Joey Aguilar, Nico Iamaleava trade with UCLA because, UCLA, obviously a dumpster fire. They just fired their coach. They're 0-3, and Nico has not played well. But Joey Aguilar really, really has. Tennessee was up 21-7 there in the first quarter. And Georgia, they just refuse to lose. That's why I picked them last week, is just because they're so consistently great and refuse to go down. And that's what they did. They just stuck with it, eventually getting it to overtime off that Tennessee missed kick that would have won them the game at the end of regulation. Now, one guy I want to talk about for Tennessee is Chris Brazzell. He was great. He was great. There were a couple of plays that you just sat back and said, wow, how did he catch that? How did he make that play? Outstanding on the 50-50 balls, especially. He went up and got a couple of balls, and a couple of those turned into those 3 touchdowns that you see there. Overall, my takeaway from this game is that Tennessee's a lot better than I expected them to be, and obviously they had the home field, the checkered out Neyland, which is always a sight to see. But the SEC still runs through Athens. It still runs through Georgia. We forget, I think, a little bit last year they still won the SEC and beat Texas twice. Now Carson Beck got hurt, and they lost to Notre Dame in the playoff. But this is a really good Georgia team, and I'm excited to see really how Tennessee can handle the loss. And they stuck at number 15 in the country after the loss, and I think for good reason. They looked really good, and they might be a lot better than at least I expected them to be heading into this season. Boy, I don't know which one was better, Georgia, Tennessee, or Texas and Notre Dame. Or Texas A&M and Notre Dame, I should say. Don't want to get those two mixed up. This was a great game. Back and forth always. No team got off to a huge lead like they did in the Tennessee-Georgia game. This game, back and forth throughout the whole thing. Notre Dame scores and goes up late. You think they're going to go up 7 with about a minute and change left and take down Texas A&M, get back on track after a loss to Miami. And then Tyler Buchner couldn't grab the snap on the extra point. They don't convert the extra point. They only score 6. They go up 40-34, only 6. And then Marcel Reed marches Texas A&M right down the field and scores on the last play of the game pretty much on 4th down and goal. Marcel Reed was just outstanding. And you see the completion percentage. If you told a Texas A&M fan that Marcel Reed was going to give up or throw for less than 50% completion percentage and A&M was going to give up 40 points, they probably would have said, well, I hope we didn't lose by 30. No, it was the big play for Marcel Reed and the Texas A&M offense. He just kept throwing them up, and his receivers that they went out and got in the portal, by the way, have been great. Casey Concepcion's really good. He just kept throwing them up to his guys, and they brought him down for A&M in a big way. Made big plays all game, let him right down the field when he needed to. And part of this is that Notre Dame's defense was not good, might not be good at all. I mean, look at these ranks. They're in the hundreds or the 70s for these defensive ranks. That is not what you expect to see from a Notre Dame defense, especially considering who their head coach is, Marcus Freeman, a defensive guy. I think their corners are struggling to cover, but it's not really because of them. It's because they're not getting any pressure on quarterbacks. They didn't really pressure Carson Beck in week 1. They didn't really pressure Marcel Reed on Saturday. And your guys on the back end, however good they may be, they're just not going to hold up for 5-6 seconds. Man, what is Notre Dame this year? I'm not sure what the rest of the season is going to look like for them, but we're going to get to that a little bit later on in the show. Clemson, Georgia Tech. Another really good game, a fun game. This one started off our Saturday, 11 a.m. kick. Just perfect, just a perfect game. To everyone that wasn't on it before the season, welcome to the Georgia Tech train. Georgia Tech, they're a player in the ACC. Clemson, they were the team that actually needed things to go their way to stay in this game. Now, a couple of those things they forced, and credit to them for doing that, but man, this could have been a lot worse in Georgia Tech's favor, and it was still a tie game, with 5 seconds left because Georgia Tech won on a walk-off field goal. Georgia Tech's got a really good quarterback. Haynes King, he's great. He's really good. You can see the numbers there. He's even better throwing the ball than I think a lot of people expect. I mean, they know that he likes to run the ball, and he did that a lot in this game as well. But 20 of 28 for 211, you're going to take that every time if you're Georgia Tech, and he is a good thrower of the ball. He's got decent weapons on the outside as well. I am a little concerned, not in this game, but as their season progresses, 25 carries for your quarterback, and he's getting banged. He's getting banged up. He's getting hit hard. 25 carries. I don't think that they can do that with him every week. But can they win without him doing that every week? That's the question. You see the Clemson schedule. I think they're done. I mean, I think they're done at least this season, and I think it's clear now that Dabo Swinney's mantra of, we're going to stick to high school recruiting, we're not going to touch the portal, we'll dabble in NIL, because of course they have to, but we're not going to take transfers. I think it's clear that they don't have the dogs to be in contention consistently in the ACC and certainly nationally if they're not dipping into the portal. I mean, I see 3 more losses at least, that games that could be losses at least, maybe 4. That road game at Louisville's not easy. Florida State obviously jumped into the top 10. It's a tough look for Clemson right now. Their defense isn't playing well, and you thought that would be a really big strength. Cade Klubnik hasn't looked good, 3rd-year starter at quarterback. It's a tough look for Clemson. I don't really know where they go from here for the rest of the season. All right, we're going to get to games that are coming up on Saturday here in a second. Let's take a look at last week's picks record. Man, if you want to know who's going to win a game, I will tell you who's going to win a game. If you want to know who's going to cover the spread, you can see in the record, I have no idea. 2-5. It's not looking good. I will say, we record this on Tuesday. It's hard to have a feel for these games on Saturday when you're doing it on Tuesday. Now, I will say, if we turn it around against the spread, I have the right to revoke everything that I just said. All right, let's get to Texas Tech and Utah. This is a huge game in the Big 12. It's a huge game nationally, really. 2 teams that, coming into the year, you didn't really know what to expect. Utah had not a great year last year. Now, their quarterback got hurt. It was just a tough year for Utah. Texas Tech, they were pretty good last year, but they brought in like 50 new guys out of the portal, and they paid a lot of money for the roster that they have this year. And it's working out so far. I think Texas Tech is trying to prove that, hey, you can be very portal reliant and still win games in college football. And they're also recruiting high schoolers at a high level too, because they've got a lot of money. All right, the quarterback matchup. Baron Morton for Texas Tech has been really good so far this year. They haven't really played anybody that has really challenged them, but he's been really good. This is a guy that has stuck at Texas Tech. He got recruited there out of high school, and he's been there for 4 years, and it's finally paying off, and he looks like a really good leader of the Texas Tech team. For Utah, they went out and got a transfer quarterback. I mentioned Texas Tech brought in a lot of transfers. The one guy they didn't was their quarterback. Utah brought in Devin Dampier from New Mexico, and he's really good as well. He's a really good player too. He can throw it, and he's very mobile. He can run when he has to. Baron Morton's not going to run too much unless he's scrambling. Devin Dampier, they can design runs for him. He's very mobile. He can get out on the outside and also make whatever throw he needs to make on the outside. I think this could be a Big 12 title game preview. The Big 12's insane, so who knows who's going to win that league. Arizona State is still there. But I think it could be a Big 12 title game preview. All right, let's get to the prediction. I just trust Kyle Whittingham. I just trust Kyle Whittingham a lot more. Texas Tech, I still don't know. I don't know if their portal acquisitions are going to mesh. I don't know for sure. So I'm going to take Utah to win. I know they're home. They're a 3.5-point favorite. I think Utah is going to win. I do think it's going to be tight, though. I think it's going to be a tight game. Two good teams, I think. So I'll take Texas Tech to cover, 3.5 points. That might as well be just home field advantage for Utah. Could be a pick 'em on a neutral field. So that's how tight this game's going to be. So if we're getting points with Texas Tech, I'll take them. Auburn and Oklahoma down in Norman on Saturday. This is a fun game for a lot of reasons. Brent, let's not take this over the shoulder here yet. I have something to explain. So this game is like, you really wanted to date this girl, and she finally said yes, let's date. And then, after a few weeks, a month or two, you realize it's just not going very well. So you break up with her. And then she goes and starts dating a guy that you one time just in passing said, yeah, I don't really like that guy that much. I don't really like him that much. And now you're all at some event together, and now you have to see it. You shouldn't care how she's doing because you broke up with her, but you do. That is how this game is. Jackson Arnold returning to Oklahoma. Oklahoma basically shooed him away after last year, a 5-star recruit that they thought was going to take them to the promised land. And it didn't go great last year for Jackson Arnold. It didn't. But Oklahoma shoot him away. He said, okay, I'll go down to Auburn, the guy that you said, I don't really like that much. I'll go play for Hugh Freeze in Auburn. And he's been pretty good so far this year. Still, of course, waiting to see what he's like against good competition. We're going to find out Saturday. He played okay against Baylor in week 1. That was really the only test that Auburn's had so far this year. John Mateer is, your new girlfriend. They brought him in, and Ben Arbuckle from Washington State, and he's been great. He's maybe the Heisman front runner right now. He's throwing the ball really well. He's running the ball really well. And Oklahoma's just a really good team. Now, Auburn will try to run the ball. Oklahoma's got a pretty good rushing defense. They really shut down Michigan a couple of weeks ago, and Oklahoma is really, I don't want to say lucky, but they're happy that they have their first 2 real tough games of the season at home. So Oklahoma is going to try to stop the run because Auburn, with Jackson Arnold and without Jackson Arnold, is going to want to run the ball. You can see it there. Auburn runs the ball a lot. They've done it really well so far this year. 10 rushing touchdowns on the ground in just 3 games, and Oklahoma's only given up 1, and it was, a 75-yard touchdown to Michigan to start the second half a couple of weeks ago. So that's where I think this game is decided. Can Oklahoma stop the Auburn rushing attack like they did Michigan a couple of weeks ago? Okay, let's get to the prediction now. I think Oklahoma's the better team. I think Auburn has played well this year, and I think that they could be a spoiler team in the SEC at the end of the year. And I do think that they have made big improvements over the last couple of years. I just think Oklahoma is much better. I think John Mateer is better than Jackson Arnold, and I think that Oklahoma's defense is going to be able to stop that Auburn rushing attack. 6.5 points. If I'm going to take Oklahoma, I'm going to take them to lay the points. Not a huge lean on the point spread, but I do think Oklahoma is going to win this game. All right. Now to the game that everybody wants to talk about here in Central Illinois. Illinois at Indiana, Saturday night in Bloomington, right here on WAND. You can watch it right here on NBC. Really excited. This is the first-ranked matchup between the two since 1950. Illinois is looking for their first road win as a top 10 team since 1990. 6:30 kick, night game, Memorial Stadium. Not the Memorial Stadium we want, but the Memorial Stadium in Bloomington. Really excited for this game. Indiana's a really good team. They're ranked 19th in the country for a reason. I think they might be better than they were last year. Their schedule just is not nearly as easy as it was last year. But I do think that they might even be a better team. I think their quarterback is better. Fernando Mendoza. They went out and got him in the portal when they needed somebody to fill that spot. He was really good at Cal last year, and he's a really good thrower of the football. It's hard to speed him up. He's really calm and poised in the pocket. He will just stand up and take it. He's not really a runner. He'll take off if he has to, but he's not a real runner of the football. But he's been really efficient this year. He's picked his spots, and he's thrown the ball really well. And I think, with him not being as mobile of a guy, that Illinois, that might actually unleash their pass rush, which has been good to start the year, but it's not as good as, we think it can be. I think with Fernando Mendoza not being able to move that well, it unleashes them because they don't have to worry about rush lanes. A couple of weeks ago against Duke, they had to worry about keeping Darian Mensah contained. They don't have to really worry about that with Fernando Mendoza. He's not going to kill you with his legs. So you can just go. You can just go and try to get up into that offensive line. Now, it helps that Fernando Mendoza has a couple of really good wide receivers. Really good. And it's going to be tough for the Illinois secondary to keep up with these two guys. Elijah Surratt, he's a preseason All-American at wide receiver, and he's been pretty good to start the year. Again, Indiana, they scheduled nobodies to open the season. At least Illinois went on the road to Duke. Indiana didn't schedule anyone. Now, they did play Old Dominion in week 1, which turns out they might be okay. They smoked Virginia Tech and got the Hokie coach fired. But Indiana hasn't really played anyone, so it's hard to it is still hard to know exactly what they're going to be when they face competition like Illinois. But these are their two guys, Elijah Surratt and Omar Cooper Jr. Elijah Surratt, like I mentioned, preseason All-American, and the scary part is that Omar Cooper has outproduced him so far this year, and that might be because teams are shading to Surratt because they know how good he is. But man, Omar Cooper is big, he's fast, he can really run, and he's been a really big deep threat for Fernando Mendoza here early on. And their running backs as well, they mix it up a lot. It's a true running back by committee. I mean, they have 5 players that have 10 plus carries on the year, which 10 carries in a game is it's splitting time. But they run the ball a lot. And I just talked about how much I appreciate Fernando Mendoza and those receivers, but they're going to run the football. They're averaging over 300 yards per game. Again, competition, not the highest of levels, and they've handled their business there so far this year. But they really like to run the ball. The names that you need to know: Roman Hemby, Kalen Black, and Lee Beebe. Those are their 3 guys that tote the rock the most. They're all mixed in. They're near 10 plus rushes a game. So a tough offense that this Illinois defense is going to face. I think they have to be committed to stopping the run because their secondary is good enough to keep those guys in check, at least for the most part. You're going to give up your plays. It's going to happen. I think they're going to focus on stopping the run. Now, defensively for Indiana, they're really good defensively too. I will say it one more time. They haven't played any team of note yet. But so far, so good for them. The one place, and you can see it right there, that Illinois hopefully can take advantage of, and we talked about it at the beginning of the show, is they need to figure out the run game. Illinois needs to figure out the run game. And Indiana, you can run on a little bit. Just a little bit. You can run on them. But overall, this Indiana defense is pretty stingy. And it's going to be a tough sledding for Illinois. But if they stay committed to the run game, I think that there are spots where they can take advantage of this Indiana defense. Curt Cignetti, the head man at Indiana, he had a lot to say about what he sees from Illinois heading into this matchup on Saturday night.
They're a really good football team. Got a lot of good players, a lot of veteran players. Coach Bielema does a great job, him and his staff, in all 3 phases: offense, defense, special teams. Veteran quarterback, has got arm talent, very accurate, can extend plays. He's won a bunch of games for Illinois. And that's the one thing about Illinois is they know what it takes. The success they had last year, return a good nucleus of guys, added some new ones. They do a nice job of disguising coverage. Got some nice disguises. And they play a lot of guys, got a lot of good players. Run to the ball, get a lot of hats to the football. Good pressure on the quarterback, tight coverage. Really tied together well. With good players.
That's just a Pittsburgh guy right there. I always appreciate it. Okay, for the prediction, tough one. I went back and forth on this one. I think Illinois is the better team. I really do think that Illinois is the better team in this game. If they're going to give us 4.5 points, we'll take them. But I think Illinois is going to win this game. I just like that they've been tested. They were tested at Duke, and they bounced back in a big way in the second half. Western Michigan is not the greatest team, but they were tested in the first half. They figured out how to battle back and really turn it on in the second half. They did that. I think Illinois has the better defense, too. So I'm going to take Illinois. I think Illinois is going to win this game. It's not a homer pick because, man, I went back and forth because I think Indiana is really good, and it's on the road. Going to be a tough one for Illinois, but it's going to be really, really, really fun. Let's take a look at Illinois' schedule one more time. After this game, if they get through this game, USC broke into the top 25. That's at home. And then Purdue and Ohio State and Washington. If they beat Indiana here, they got to win one of those two against USC and Ohio State, and they can start feeling like there's going to be a trip to the college football playoff if they win against Indiana and then one of those two against USC and Ohio State. Really exciting time to be an Illinois fan. So before we end the show, I just want to have one quick thought on Notre Dame and the college football playoff. Now, one of the biggest talking points heading out of Saturday was about Notre Dame and their chances of still making the playoff. This is where you're going to start to learn some of my thoughts about things like conference realignment, the portal, NIL, and the playoff. The playoff and everyone's incessant need to try to expand it even more, making it the only thing that matters, I think, is tarnishing college football. Of course, the ultimate goal is to win the national title, but you are lying to yourself if you believe that every school has a shot at winning the title. It's never been that way. It's never going to be that way. All the playoff, the expanded playoff, does is give the big dogs a second or third chance. We saw it with Notre Dame last year. Ohio State had 2 losses, won the national title. Notre Dame's one of them, and they're now 0-2. Could they rip off 10 in a row and get in? Of course. If they do, they probably will get in, but I'm not convinced that they should. I don't care how good they look at the end of the year. They shouldn't have had a chance last year because, remember, they lost to Northern Illinois at home. Northern Illinois at home. Win your games, don't complain when you don't. The strength of schedule battle that's going on right now is a completely different conversation, and we can have that at some point. But the urgency of the regular season is a big part about what makes college football great. Every year, that urgency is just withering and withering away because people that don't care about the sport as a whole are the ones that are making decisions for it. That's our show. Thanks so much for watching. We're back here next Tuesday and every single Tuesday as Illinois plays football. Big one Saturday night. Remember, right here on WAND. Make sure you tune in. Enjoy Saturday. You only got so many of them left. See ya.